Hi, thanks for watching. All right, so in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit more about Lori Vallo and Chad Daybell, okay? But now in the context of having seen a recent interview with a cousin of Lori's. This cousin, I think has illuminated a lot for me. And this is Braxton Southwick, okay? This is a cousin, his name is Braxton Southwick. And he's a really like a big name in the world of preppers. Okay, he's sort of been on a lot of reality TV, and he's sort of been sort of like a poster child, sort of a public face to the extreme prepper movement. Okay, especially from the angle of the Mormon preppers. Okay, and I have to admit, okay, I mean I had already understood. I guess I already I sort of had a feeling. I guess I don't know. I had a feeling that Lori really believed in a lot of these religious delusions, that it was really an honest belief, and that these people really do believe the end of the world is coming, or at least they were believing that at around the time all these crimes were committed. Okay, so I already kind of had an idea, but I don't know that I had an idea the extent to which Lori believed. In other words, I knew that Lori had some level of religious delusion, okay, but I didn't realize the extent of it. Okay, and so I have to admit that after watching this recent interview with Braxton Southwick, and I encourage anybody to watch these interviews. Okay, go to the Hidden True Crime YouTube. Fantastic interview with Braxton Southwick, because I think this is one of the best interviews out there. Because when I listened to the interviews with, like, say, Melanie Gibb, and when I heard Zulema Pastenis, they seemed so flaky to me. Okay, they seemed so dorky and flaky that I had trouble really sympathizing and really understanding how deeply these people believe in the end of the world. Okay, and how they believe in the coming of Jesus Christ, and sort of like the second coming, and how everything's going to sort of work out according to the book of Revelations, basically. I just had trouble taking it really seriously. And so there was always a question to me, how much do they really believe this? I knew there was an extent to which they all believe this stuff, but I think after watching the Braxton Southwick interview, now I realize that it's a lot more of a serious belief than what I thought. Okay. And I guess, I have to admit, it's hard to relate to people who actually believe in stuff that's so far out there, and their behavior is so far out there. Okay. Now, granted, I want to be very careful. Okay. I don't think any of the murders would have taken place. I don't think Charles would have been killed. I don't think Tammy would have been killed. I don't think the children would have been killed. Okay. If there weren't some narcissistic personality disorder stuff going on. Okay. There's no question about it. But I don't think any of those crimes would have taken place either if it weren't for the level of religious delusion. Okay, the religious belief. Okay, whether we want to call it delusion or belief, I guess now, after having seen the Braxton Southwick, interview, I have to say it's probably as much belief as it is delusion. I think it deserves to be called belief, because these people, they really, really believe, and it's part of their culture and even their subculture. And so, I guess it does deserve to be called belief. But I think when they got into the area of, let's say, I think Chad and Lori, I think they took the basic apocalyptic beliefs, and I think they stretched it all the way out into things like zombies, and just like, the rating scale, the light and dark scale, where they took it so far. I think at some point they were going into delusion. Okay, and it wasn't just, maybe it started off as belief, or maybe the basis of it is belief, but at some point they did wander into the area of delusions. And I think even to the point of maybe even a kind of a shared narcissistic fantasy between Lori and Chad. So there was some point where they sort of broke off, even from the world of the preppers. You know what I mean? And we have to be honest and say there is a place where we can sort of question how earnest their beliefs were, and how much they maybe were slipping into delusion. And then in the area of delusion, I think we it's fair to question how much they really, really believed, or how much they were just sort of slipping into a fantasy. And I guess, fantasy is sort of in between belief and, whatever. But at least at the base, I guess the foundation of what's going on, the idea that Jesus Christ is coming back the idea that the world's coming to an end, the idea that we're going to all go off the grid and live in tribulation. I think that part, to be honest, I think they really believe that. I mean, it's hard for me to understand, but I think I have to admit, having watched this Braxton Southwick interview, I'm going to have to admit that I think there's a lot more belief in the picture than what I had estimated. Okay, even though I kind of suspected that there was a lot of actual belief and a lot of delusion in the picture. Okay, it wasn't just mental illness, it wasn't just narcissism. But I think now, I have to admit, I think there's much more belief going on, and it's, it is scary, but we don't have to be afraid of anybody who's a prepper, because without that narcissism component, without that mental illness component, it wouldn't go all the way to the point of committing crimes. Okay, so basically, I encourage anybody to go to the Hidden True Crime channel and to watch the interview with Braxton Southwick, because I think you're going to see, okay, from someone who's a lot more sympathetic, from somebody who doesn't really push anybody's buttons. Like he's not trying to like massage the truth or make himself look good or bad. He's just telling it like it is. And when I listen to Melanie Gibb, it's like she's trying to craft the story to make herself look good or make herself not look so bad. So I don't really trust what she says. I don't feel comfortable with what she's saying, and I can't really sympathize. But with Braxton Southwick, I mean, he just puts it all on the table. He admits what he believes, and he doesn't try to like massage it or make himself look better or worse. And so at that point, you can just sort of see, look, I mean, these people, they just, first of all, they believe in Jesus Christ totally. Okay. They believe Jesus Christ is coming back. Okay. They believe that 100%. They believe the world is ending, basically. The civilized world is ending. They think they fully believe that we're going to go into a period of tribulation where everybody's going to be living off the grid. It's going to be a very hard life. Okay. It's going to be survival, basically. And basically, they believe that Jesus Christ is going to come back, and that very selected people are going to be the ones that move on into the better world, the new better world or whatever with Jesus Christ. And so, on top of that, I think Lori probably believes she has a very high position with Jesus Christ for the future, for the coming new world or whatever. And I guess Chad Daybell also believes that he has a pretty elevated, pretty privileged position up there. It sounds crazy, but just because I can't relate to it doesn't mean I can't understand that it is for them a true belief. Now, but how did they get to the point where they could commit all these crimes? Something more had to be in the picture beyond just this belief. Okay. And I think at that point, we do have to look at narcissism. Okay. We do have to look at something that's sort of on the criminal spectrum. Okay. And so basically, when I look at narcissism, okay, and here, I'm going to be very clear. Okay. I look at narcissism not just as NPD. Okay. It's not just narcissistic personality disorder. I look at narcissism as something that affects everybody to some degree. Okay. Narcissism to me is basically a combination, okay, of a belief system, a belief system around how much discomfort and pain a person should carry as a baseline, okay? Basically, everybody has sort of a personal belief. It's a deep, deep belief. We all have sort of a belief as to what a person should carry, or how much discomfort, or how much burden bearing, how much turmoil and burden and discomfort a person should carry as a baseline. We all have a belief as to what a life should look like in terms of discomfort. Okay. Sort of like expectation, or an idea of what a person should, because when you have a belief, when you have a belief about how much discomfort a person should carry, necessarily you also have an idea, a belief as to how much is too much. Okay. In other words, there has to be a belief in you, deep seated, a belief of when burdens and turmoil and strain and stress and just the discomforts of life get to be too much. Okay. And I think everybody psychologically, in terms of psychological stress, okay, everybody has sort of a limit where in their belief it's sort of like too much. And it's sort of like at that point, you just throw in the towel, or you quit your job, or, you unplug or whatever. We all have a different level that is sort of built into us as to when we believe too much is too much. Okay. And for everybody, it's different. All right. And I think narcissism is basically when your level of like, this is too much is sort of set, it's sort of not a very high level. Okay. Combined with, okay, maybe not having a conditioning, not being conditioned to carry a lot of discomfort, frustration, irritation, discomfort, stress. In other words, if we're not really conditioned for the normal bruises and discomforts of life, okay, we're not really conditioned to carry a lot of psychological discomfort. Psychological discomfort. I'm not talking about physical. You may be able to lift weights all day, but psychologically, you have a limit as to how much tension, how much turmoil, how much stress and strain that you're able to carry. Your conditioning is only set at a certain point. Or if you can hold a lot of turmoil and stress, maybe for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks, you don't really have that marathon level of endurance to go all the way for a long time. You're not conditioned for it. And you don't have the belief system that a person should be able to carry a lot of stress and strain. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like a combination. And again, you don't have to be like a superhero, like where you're carrying, like I believe we should carry like an infinite level of pain. And I'm conditioned to carry like tons and tons of pain. But the idea is that in the population, we all have different levels of how much we believe a person should carry and when too much is too much. And then we all have a certain level of conditioning, and that varies according to people. Okay. So basically, when those two levels of how much we believe we should carry and how much we actually can carry in terms of our conditioning, when those two levels are sort of intermediate, that's when you run the risk, okay, combined with other factors, okay, like susceptibility to fantasy or susceptibility to escapism. When all those come together and you don't really have the belief system to sort of resist it, and you don't have the actual conditioning, those can sort of come together to allow people to sort of break off into sort of disengage from the real world that involves a certain level of bruising, certain level of frustration, certain level of stress, certain level of multitasking, just dealing with things that are uncomfortable. And when all those things come together, people sort of break off into sort of like their own world, basically, where they can't really engage in the full level of stress and difficulty and conflict of the actual real world. Okay. So that to me is sort of how I understand narcissism. Okay. And I'm not just talking about NPD, like narcissistic personality disorder. That's very specific. That's kind of like a psychological category. I'm talking about more just the phenomenon of narcissism as we all experience it. Okay. And so my theory is that both Chad and Lori, probably at a psychological level, not physical. I mean, who knows? Chad, he probably could have chopped wood all day. He probably physically had a lot of endurance. But I'm saying psychologically, at his sensitive area, okay, there's probably like certain psychological turmoil, certain psychological stress that he probably wasn't conditioned to carry, okay, and probably didn't even believe a person should have to carry. He probably didn't believe a person should just endure a lot of discomfort at that psychological level. Okay, so that to me is kind of on the narcissistic spectrum, and it's dangerous. It's potentially dangerous, And then because, I mean, there's a lot in life. Okay, there's a lot of bruising, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of strain that people will run into just in ordinary life that a person ought to be able to endure just to not be unstable. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have your frustrations in life. You're going to have your turmoils, and if you don't have that extra shock absorber and that endurance to get through it, you're just going to make bad decisions and you're going to be unstable, so it doesn't have to be committing crimes. It could just be quitting your job. It could be just doing stupid things. And likewise with Lori, Lori may have been very strong in certain areas. She may be a very strong personality. She may be very imposing, dominant. She may have been, a really good mother for many, many years, even decades, except that I think in certain areas of her psyche and her psychology, there's certain discomforts that she wasn't really prepared to tolerate. Okay. And when she would run into frustrations or provocations, she couldn't really hold them in that little psychological place inside of her because she didn't really have the endurance for that kind of strength. See, you can be physically strong, you can be dominant, you can be aggressive, but psychologically, there's a place inside of us where there's it's like you either do or you don't have the ability to tolerate frustration and discomfort and just carry it, And so I think in both Chad Daybell and Lori, deep down inside in that psychological place, there's certain psychological strain and endurance, certain psychological turmoil that they didn't really have a high level of resistance to be able to carry it and even believing that a person should carry. Okay. So what do I mean by that? I've noticed that Lori, whenever she would run into like problems in her personal life, okay, like say a problem with a spouse or a domestic issue, she would get all ballistic and get all litigious and get into like, divorcing and then getting into family court and going on the rampage because I don't think she could really tolerate just having discomfort of having messy stuff happening in her family, basically, And of course, like she believed that one of her ex-husband had actually molested at least one of the children. Okay, so I understand, but the level to which she took it, okay, without really, who knows whether what she said really happened. She may have exaggerated it, but something tells me that the actual scale of the actual true problem she was dealing with was nothing compared to the size of how she reacted to it and the campaign she went on to deal with it. In other words, reacting to kind of relatively moderate or mild things, she would take very, very major campaign in her life to deal with. So it's almost like that to me is a sign that when she's confronted with things that really like stir her up psychologically, she has a limited ability to just kind of let it be uncomfortable, let it be messy. And then she goes to this major reaction. So that tells me she can't really hold discomfort, provocation, irritation, turmoil. Can't just hold it. She has to go into that massive reaction. Okay. So in other words, the question is, do you have the holding capacity for like, say, really irritating, really provocative things, turmoils, so then you get into the, like say the stage where her marriage with Charles Vallo is starting to get a little bit, getting a little bit, on the rocks. And so, she gets into this thing where she starts accusing Charles Vallo of maybe seeing prostitutes or whatever. And, who knows, maybe she saw a couple messages on his phone. Maybe Charles Vallo was guilty. I don't know, maybe of something. But the bottom line is the reaction was so extreme, as opposed to somebody who could just maybe kind of deal a little more, or maybe not take such an extreme reaction. You know what I mean? So, I mean, maybe the relationship with Charles Vallo was destined to come to an end. But if you look at different people ending relationships, some end their relationships with much less fireworks. It's just sort of calmer. It's like, okay, we're going to separate. It's just everything's a little more muted and a little more because people can actually tolerate the discomfort without going on a massive fireworks campaign and going on the rampage for everything. So basically, even if Charles was guilty, and I don't know this, but even if he was guilty of doing anything disloyal to Lori, okay, I think her reaction shows that she couldn't just tolerate the fact that they have a messy relationship and maybe come to a messy termination of the relationship, maybe get a divorce, but just do everything calmly, low fireworks, just whatever. But she didn't have the holding capacity for that. Okay. And I'm also willing to consider that maybe Charles Vallo didn't really do anything. Okay. But that she was just in despair because she felt like Charles wasn't really her spiritual equal. Okay. And basically she was just getting ants in her pants. Like she was just tired of this relationship and she just wanted to move on and, have a different life, whatever. So, but the bottom line is that with both Lori Vallo and Chad Daybell, what I see in them evidently is that in some psychological part of themselves, like a certain center, they have a very limited ability to deal with the tribulations of life, the stress, the turmoil, sort of the strain and the conflict and the discomfort of real life situations that can be unpleasant. Okay. Just a very limited ability and a very flash reaction, like just evidencing a very low ability just to hold discomfort and moving very fast into major reaction. Okay. So we'll never really know what happened with Charles. Like, I don't know if maybe he was disloyal in some way, or maybe he just wasn't a spiritual equal to Lori. And she was just getting tired of it, basically, and basically just kind of doing those little things to set up a lot of conflict so that basically Charles was becoming a bad guy. And then as she got more like way into her like religious stuff, I think Charles was like, you're crazy, And I think basically, not only did she have Charles as like not on the same page with her, but now Charles is starting to accuse her of being crazy. So like the conflict was escalating. And like we said in the early video, Lori Vallo is a very escalatory person. Okay. And I guess as people that are very escalatory are people that can't really hold a lot of turmoil and discomfort. They have to discharge a lot of reaction instead of just holding things, and just suffering basically. So, so no matter how real the beliefs they had, you also have to look at the psychology. Okay, Lori's a person who's psychologically that narcissistic stuff, that immature, low ability to tolerate discomfort, and even the belief that a person shouldn't have a lot of discomfort in life. Basically all those things combined. So that it wasn't just a belief, but it was also her, I guess, criminal psychology, her narcissistic psychology, that sort of completed the perfect storm. Sorry, today I'm just not very today I'm not very eloquent. But anyway, the bottom line is, look, for these crimes to take place, it was both the belief system, it was the level of belief, it was the level of delusion, plus that sort of criminal psychology. Okay. And I want to be careful because I don't look at NPD and I don't look at narcissism as being purely criminal. I think there are some criminogenic, some criminal aspects to it. Okay. But I also think that we should also take seriously, there is a diminished capacity. Okay. And there is a truly psychological part of it. In other words, if somebody is truly having narcissistic issues, okay, we do have to be fair. Okay. And we do have to appreciate that when a person has a limited ability to tolerate psychological distress, okay, when you have a limited ability to endure with psychological discomfort, okay, to endure long term, okay, if you're limited in your ability and you always go to flash reaction, okay, we have to be honest and say that's a diminished capacity. Okay, that's not a person who has the full capacity of a normal person. Okay, so we have to respect that. All right, so even though that is criminal psychology, in all honesty, there is some diminished capacity there. Okay. So basically, after watching the Braxton Southwick interview, I just want to add that the level of belief that's in the picture here is very real. Okay. In other words, when you put all the dominoes together to create the perfect storm here, okay, yes, there is that, say, criminal psychology, there is the narcissism, but there is also, okay, serious hardcore belief, and it's real. Okay. And so it's just like a perfect storm where you're putting narcissistic personalities in a situation where they really believe what's going on. Okay. So, my understanding, having watched the interview, is that Braxton Southwick, he's the cousin of Lori. He actually believes that Lori sort of felt justified, at least in killing her children. Okay, because basically for these Mormon people who live on the fringes, who really are sort of in the prepper world, they believe the world is coming. Okay, the sort of like the end times. Sort of like the apocalyptic times. They really believe it's going to be a terrible tribulation. Okay, that really most people don't want to live through that. Okay. And I think Lori had always expressed, and Brandon actually echoed this. He said that Lori always said it would almost be better to die now and then come back after the apocalypse, And I think her attitude was that she didn't want to put her children through what would really be the realities of the end of the world, And I think they really thought the end of the world was coming. Okay. So I think, what actually led to the final killing of Tylee and JJ, I don't think it was just, we just want to put them out of their misery so they don't have to live the end of the world. I think there was more to it. I think they also believed that they were becoming zombies and that they weren't really who they were. They were inhabited by evil spirits. So it was a little more than just taking them out of their misery so they don't have to live through the apocalypse. I think they also had some added justification with all their zombies and stuff. But the only point I'm trying to make is I think the basic foundation for all this belief system and all this delusion, the foundation, they actually really believed it. And it's something they really took seriously. Okay. So, I just want to add that to the picture because in all fairness, even with all the narcissism and even with all the craziness and the selfishness, okay, and even though they're very dishonest, okay, I think we can't ignore the fact there's a part of this picture where they really believe in some of this stuff, okay. And so, I'm the kind of person where I think we need to create a realistic picture of everything and be fair, all right. And we shouldn't paint them to be any darker than they really are, and we should just see them as realistically as we can, okay. And so I just think that we need to respect the fact that at least the basic belief systems, that basic apocalyptic belief system, that is, they really believe it. It's something they really take seriously, and it's very real to them. Okay. So, but then finally, let's talk about the part that's maybe we could question. All right. Because at some point, even if you are part of these prepper subcultures and all that, there was a point where Lori and Chad got to a point where they were starting to believe things that they wouldn't even share with their own group members. Okay. They were sort of separating off into like their own like private, like extremism. Okay. And because, the part about the zombies, the part about the dark and light scale, they were only sharing that with just very, very few people. And then if you talk about the part where they're thinking about who they should have to kill, well, they didn't share that with anybody. That was just between Alex, Lori, and Chad. It was like only those three. So even like Melanie didn't get to know about that stuff. Even Zulema did not know about all that stuff. Okay, so they got to a point where they got to some really hardcore, like really serious, like controversial beliefs that they weren't even willing to share except between the three of them. Basically, it was basically Alex, Lori, and Chad. Okay, so now at that point, now we can fairly ask, like, did they really believe in those things, or is that where they sort of were separating into something that was just pure narcissism? Okay, well, I guess my feeling on this is that considering how seriously they believe in the basic apocalyptic stuff, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think they had some level of belief in the zombies and in the light and dark scale and having to kill people, and the fact that they thought that Tammy was inhabited by some other spirit or whatever. I think there was some level at which they believed, just because their basic beliefs are so strong. Okay. But I think that when you get into the stuff about the zombies and all that, I think at that point, I'm not going to call that belief. I think that's more delusion. I think that's where they're into the delusion. Okay. But you can't really understand the delusion if you don't understand the foundational belief system they have, that they really think the end of the world is coming. Okay. If they did not think the end of the world was coming, they wouldn't do all these things. Okay. They wouldn't, because they would know they would get caught. Okay. Or they would know that it would be unnecessary, So, so all the stuff about the zombies and all the stuff about the light and dark scales and, having to kill all these people, I think you have to see it in the context that they really think the end of the world is coming, or at least they thought it was coming. Okay. And now after watching the interview with Braxton Southwick, now I can see that they thought the end of the world was coming like just in a matter of months. Okay. In that year, 2019, they really thought the world was really starting to come to an end. Okay. So I think that's the reason why they thought they even had the opportunity to kill Tammy and Tylee and JJ. Okay. So basically, I guess if I was to try to summarize, after watching the interview with Braxton Southwick, I would say that definitely Alex and Lori and Charles, Alex, Lori, and Chad, they did get into sort of like their own like private extreme belief system. Okay, that they weren't even sharing with their other group members. Okay, so that you can't deny that. But I think that was still delusion. I don't think they were just making it up just to have fun. I don't think they were just like, hey, we want to kill some people. I don't think that. I just don't think that. They're not stone cold killers. I think they really were in a delusion. I think Chad was just crazy in love with Lori. I think he lost his judgment. And I think they just went off way off into the world of delusion. And I think that in a sense, it's founded in true belief, true religious belief. So, It's just to be fair. It's just to be fair. And it's just to paint the picture of people who do have criminality, they do have narcissism, but there is some level of honest belief in there that I think has to be understood to give a full picture of what really happened. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and wishing everybody the best.